So today we're looking at Joe Tryon, edge defender out of University of Washington, opted out of the 2020 season, which you didn't love to see. But this guy's got big time potential. I think he can play both as a stand-up rusher and with his hand in the dirt in both a 3-4 and some 4-3 schemes as well. If he continues to develop, he's got really good strength. He's got really good get-off. He can corner the edge. There's a lot to like about him, but he's definitely still learning a lot about the position. I think he's a little bit of a polarizing player from some of what I've read around. I try not to read too much into this stuff, but I'm pretty high on him. I think you can definitely take him towards the end of the first round. I think there's really a lot to like about him. I think he's one of the more underrated players in this class. Is Joe Tryon strong at the point of attack? This example would say yes, he is. He handled Pnei Sewell pretty well there. Not weak. That is my example. The talent is absolutely first round talent. 100%. And I think people are getting mad at certain parts like his mental processing, overall like recognition, certain dimensions of like competitive toughness, which aren't really big deals, in my opinion, for this position. Like if he played safety and you had some of those concerns, I'd be a bit more worried. But he got better from 18 to 19 in those areas. The thing with edge is you want to be able to identify athletes because athletes really turn out well at the position. The problem is you have to identify the athletes. I think some people I think they're underrating how good of an athlete he is. He's really, really good. And a lot of it is untapped. Like this type of fluidity at this height. Another thing to like focus on when you watch him is watch I don't know how you describe this, but the contact time of his cleats actually in the ground in between strides. I think it can be very interesting, especially when he gets up to top speed. I think this is an athlete who actually is going to be able to play at higher speeds even when he doesn't play this like meandering style. I think when he plays more of an upfield style, his body is properly coordinated and he's overall athletic enough to be able to do this type of stuff. He's just a really good athlete. I don't know why more people aren't. He's not a guy out of nowhere because a lot of guys in the NFL seem to like him. I don't know exactly who is like crazy high on him, but there are people that I think like him a good amount. I haven't looked into exactly a lot of what they said, and I wish he did come back. But his problems relative to his talent, I'm very okay with taking him pretty high. And I think this false step problem can kind of be ironed out. It's just something like you just got to retrain your nervous system. It's like pad level. You got to drill it. You got to work on it. But I think there's a lot more plays like this that Tryon's capable of. The extension, the turn, the tilt, the finish. That's a freaking good rep. If you watch some of the hand in the dirt reps, 3-point, 4-point stance, particularly the 4-point stance, I think it negates two things with Tryon, which is why it's interesting. Do you want to play him in a 4-3? Do you want to play him as a stand-up rusher in a 3-4 and like a 3-4 point? It's interesting because when he's in the 4-point stance, he comes out lower out of his stance, so it helps the pad level problem. And also, he doesn't have the false step problem. Now, this rep gets a little jumbled up because of the hand usage. But for the first part of the rep, this really helps his get off. The tackle's already turning here. Tryon just doesn't get through with the hand usage in the second part of the rep. But in terms of getting a consistent get off right out of the gates and staying low out of your stance, I think that this is one way. This stance, I think, and I think he plays a little bit more aggressive out of a 4-point stance too, just looking at a lot of those reps. I think he can play both, though. He has a lot more power output that he is going to be able to tap into, and I think there's a lot of signs of this that if you keep watching some of Tryon's tape, His change of direction ability is really good when he's just making these little moves here. He's got some good tilt on this rep, good extension, good power through the hands, converting this momentum into the blowback. Obviously, his teammates cleaning up on the other end as a free blitzer, but I think that when you look at like Tryon, the overall athlete, I feel like he's being a little bit underrated at this point because he didn't play in 2020, and he only had 8 sacks in 2019. But I think a lot of those are situational. When you look at like offenses like USC and Oregon, a lot of those games there weren't great pass rushing situations, and obviously they move him around a lot too. But I think that this ability to, like when you're talking about like speed to power, like stutter-bull, like there's an arsenal for him to tap into at the next level when you just analyze like his overall movement skills, which I think is really interesting.
All right, here's a play I find really interesting. Wide alignment going up against Austin Jackson here right near the goal line. I think this showcases one of his strengths, which is that he can turn the corner after the initial contact. So if you watch, his momentum kind of stops a little bit. He doesn't lose his balance at all. He's still kind of turning the feet. But the momentum that he initially had from the wide alignment kind of stops there. He's able to turn that outside shoulder. Big thing if you can do this in the NFL. It makes your avenues for winning a lot easier. If you can flatten this angle, you're not going to be reliant, like, regardless of like the quarterback's drop depth. Like if he's at 8 yards, if he's at 7 yards, you're going to be fine if you can consistently do this. And the way that he does this isn't really based on like his overall hand placement. This is more traits based. I think when you watch like an Epinesa type player in college, he was a lot about like hand usage, like overall power. This is more like athleticism, being able to turn the corner, because the hand placement isn't ideal. He gets tripped up a little bit by his own dude. You can see this in run reps too, but you'll see this on his tape. I think he turns the corner well, and I think he can turn half a man well during the rush.
Here's a rep against the University of Hawaii. Slowed down a bit. So Tryon's going to get into the chest initially. The tackle is going to realize this. Tryon in the better situation. Tackle's going to reset his hands with that little maneuver right there for the second punch. Now Tryon, I think you might be able to tell this faster in full speed, but as you see, he's not really coming like screaming out of the gates. He's kind of got this meandering pass rush style, which is different from like super power dominant players who might play this style. Because Tryon, like with a player with elite get off, you're not fully seeing it here, but you can see signs of it because once he's here, then he's working to the outside. And obviously like super quick pass rep. But if you just watch it full speed, not really coming. I didn't even quite full speed. It's that second movement right there from Tryon. After the tackle's resetting his hands, because, like, look, he's going to be ready to punch. But with Tryon and his traits, Tryon's going to be able to reduce some of the surface area, I think, in the NFL level if people try to do this on him. And he can win the first part of the rep. Traits will kind of, like, take him through and help him win that second part of the rep.
On this play, tight end attached, but he's just going to hit the inside. I think he plays well through lateral contact, something we talked about with Patrick Jones, which gave me, if you want to be a counter rusher where you're really working like C to B or B to C, you need to be able to play through lateral contact. And Tryon's got a better build overall than Patrick Jones. And so he's going to pick up the holding call here. I think he does a good job overall. And the tackle setting a little bit. Actually, no, he's fine. He just gets beat to the inside. Part of that is expectation based because with the tight end attached, you just assume Tryon, all right, He's probably just going to have to work outside. He's just working right inside, but he plays like well through these types of contact. So I think that with Tryon, you can have him develop into a player who can become like a traits-based counter rusher, which is really interesting. So the Washington defense does a lot of stuff in terms of like the fronts and the blitz packages that they're going to bring from game to game, drive to drive. Tryon's way out here in just a freaking wide as hell alignment. I don't even know what you call these. But yeah, that's where he is. And so what I just like the punch that he gets. Getting that outside shoulder to turn. Working the arm over. He's going to be really good at this move. Because when he works his arm over, it's not like Patrick Jones where it's like, it's a little bit looping. It's long, even though Jones isn't long, but it just takes a little longer to hit. Tryon, I think, has the ability to be really concise with some of his hand uses. And so you like the initial push. Obviously gets a runway because of where he was aligned from. But you like what he's working there.
All right, so here's a good play. He makes a run defense. He's going to shoot up field. Play side B-gap keeper by the quarterback. Makes the tackle. Not a ton to that play. I don't think there's anything crazy scheme-wise. The front, point play side. Yeah, pretty standard. So Tryon doesn't drop into coverage a ton, but I think you can do some zone blitz stuff with him if you want. This is actually a pretty good rep. Where he's dropping hook. We got the drag, we got the back. Just kind of triggers, makes the pass break up. And movement-wise, he looks pretty good, pretty fluid. You like how he adjusts this. And then triggers, breaks up the pass. Good job right there. But a lot of reps. I hear a lot of people talking about his coverage ability, but a lot of times he's just dropping in a spot. A lot of times it's not really targeted. It's so infrequent that offenses don't have true tendencies on it. People aren't really throwing like beaters at him. It's a lot of simple stuff. So I think a lot of his coverage grade is pretty incomplete. So Tryon's over here. This is from 2018. I think just as a generality in his 2018 tape, I think sometimes he was like a bit behind. And you saw it a little at 2019 as well, but he definitely picked it up a little bit. Especially in the run game in 2018. I just think he looked like he was swimming in a lot of situations. He was a step behind. You could tell he was a little raw. You could tell he was an athlete learning to play football. But I think this definitely improved as he went on with his career at Washington. All right, so physically, Tryon is a good point of attack player. He's pretty strong. He uses his hands well in run defense. So if you're going to one gap him in a system, I think you're going to be fine as long as he's kind of like out on an island if it's just like him at the tackle. Not the best rep here with the tight end attached. From this formation, based on what Oregon does, you're either thinking like split zone or you're thinking like a double team at the point of attack. And they're going to get the double team where the tight end's chipping. Now, Tryon takes it on as if it's a single block. He gets the chip, gets knocked off balance. Now, the good part of this rep is Tryon kind of does like the little Olay, gets the swipe of the hands, and then gets back, plays side. Problem is he misses the tackle. He can miss. Now, this is a little bit of a harder tackle to make. But you may not have gotten in this situation if you approach the double team, not surely a double team, but the chip block from the tight end a little bit differently in his body positioning. And I think there is a tendency for him to miss tackles and just be a little bit a step behind. You saw it less in 2019 than you saw in 2018. 2018, it could look a little rough at times, if we're being honest. But if you're going to play him in like a one-gap system where his run defense responsibilities aren't crazy, he's an athletic player, he's a strong player. So I think that the less you ask of him early on as like a run defender in terms of like the mental processing and sorting out possibilities of what an offense might be doing, I think the more that you can narrow it for him early, I think the better off you can be, and then you can kind of expand what you're going to do. So I think some players are more of a hard eval than others, and I think Tryon's actually pretty straightforward. He's an athlete in a position where athletes matter a lot. He's a better athlete than I think some people think he is by a little bit. He's got to improve in his mental processing. He did between 18 and 19. You wish he played 20 because then we would have had another piece of the puzzle to see, all right, did he make another jump? Because if he did, this guy would be a bona fide round one player where we're talking about going in the top 20. Now it's about interpretation. How do you interpret his flaws? Because he's got mental processing flaws. He misses some tackles sometimes. I think he still is learning the position. And there's a little bit of competitive toughness stuff that we didn't fully go over, but if you guys watch his tape, you might see a little bit of it on certain reps. And so I think it's about interpreting the flaws in his game and where you see him fitting. Because that's what a lot of tape is. It's people act like it's objective, but it's really subjective because no one's telling you what plays matter more than others. You got to figure that out on your own. And with Tryon, I view them more favorably. And I think if you play in like a one-gap style defense where he's really just setting the edge, he's good at doing that. You're not asking him to be a rocket scientist over here. And so I think I'm probably going to have if I'm a team like Buffalo picking at 30, if I'm the Jets picking at 34, I'm looking at this player big time because I think those teams need to add some rushers. It's right around in the draft where I want to take these types of players. And I just think he's going to turn out. Like this is a traits guy that I kind of want to put my kind of get behind. And I haven't seen a lot of people do that. And I think it's because they're overweighting some of the things that I personally don't see as quite important when you're looking at the projection and what you're going to be asking. So thank you guys for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. We're probably going to move off of line play for a little bit, but we might get back to some other linemen. We'll go into some other positions. We'll get a couple more videos out there. But thank you guys. Subscribe if you haven't. And have a great day.